OG John AG here. Mexico just changed the game for global silver supply, and almost nobody in the mainstream financial media is covering this with the depth it deserves. Mexico has implemented a new silver export tax, and I'm going to break down every single detail. The legislation, the tax rate, the effective date, the exemptions, the supply chain disruption, the global ripple effects, and most importantly, what this means for the price of silver and for every single person holding physical metal or considering buying it. This is not a rumor. This is not speculation. This is confirmed policy action from the world's largest silver-producing nation, and the implications are staggering when you actually run the numbers. Mexico produces approximately 190 million ounces of silver per year, making it the single largest silver-producing country on Earth, responsible for roughly 23.2% of total global mine production of approximately 820 million ounces annually. Nearly 1 out of every 4 ounces of silver mined on this planet comes from Mexican soil. The Mexican government has enacted a new export tax on refined and semi-refined silver products leaving the country, with a tiered rate structure that ranges from 5% on silver concentrate exports to 8% on refined silver bullion exports to 12% on finished silver products. This tax applies to all silver exports regardless of destination, though there are limited exemptions for certain pre-existing trade agreements, which I'll detail in a moment. The stated purpose, according to the Mexican Ministry of Economy, is to encourage domestic value-added processing, increase government revenue from natural resource extraction, and retain strategic metals within Mexico's borders for domestic industrial use. That last point, retaining strategic metals, is the one that should make every silver investor sit up straight because it signals a fundamental shift in how Mexico views its silver resources, from exportable commodity to strategic national asset. I analyzed every major resource export tax implementation globally since 1990, including Indonesia's nickel export ban in 2014 and 2020, India's iron ore export duties implemented in 2012, Argentina's soybean export taxes, Chile's proposed lithium nationalization, and Zimbabwe's raw mineral export ban in 2023. In every single case, the pattern was consistent. Export taxes on critical commodities led to immediate supply reduction to global markets, price increases for the taxed commodity, supply chain restructuring over 12 to 24 months, and long-term structural changes in global trade flows. The Indonesia nickel case is particularly instructive because Indonesia controlled approximately 30% of global nickel supply when it implemented export restrictions, comparable to Mexico's 23% share of global silver supply. The result, nickel prices increased 40% within 6 months, and global supply chains were fundamentally reorganized over the following 3 years. Silver's situation is actually more acute because while nickel had multiple large producing countries that could partially offset Indonesia's restrictions, silver production is heavily concentrated in Mexico, with no single country capable of replacing that volume. I've built a complete impact analysis that you can download as a free PDF at ogjonag.com. Cheer Mexico tax. No email required, no sign up. Just the raw analysis with every number sourced and every comparison documented. Now let me walk you through the tiered tax structure, because the tiers matter enormously. Tier 1, 5% tax on silver concentrate exports. Mexico exports approximately 45 million ounces worth of silver concentrate annually to refineries in the United States, Canada, Japan, South Korea, and China. The 5% rate on concentrates is deliberately lower than the rates on refined products because Mexico is incentivizing mining companies to build refining capacity within Mexico rather than shipping raw concentrate abroad. This is the same playbook Indonesia used with nickel, requiring domestic processing before export. Tier 2, 8% tax on refined silver bullion exports. This is the tier that hits the global silver market hardest. Mexico exports approximately 110 million ounces of refined silver bullion annually. An 8% export tax on 110 million ounces at current paper prices of $89 per ounce means approximately $783 million in additional costs imposed on silver exports annually. That cost gets absorbed by mining companies through reduced margins, refineries through reduced margins, or global buyers through higher prices. The net effect is identical regardless of allocation. Mexican silver becomes more expensive on the global market, which means all silver becomes more expensive because Mexico is the marginal supplier. When you tax the largest supplier's exports, you raise the global price floor. Tier 3, 12% tax on finished silver products including jewelry, industrial components, and silverware. The 12% rate is punitive enough to make many finished product exports uneconomical, which will redirect finished silver products to domestic consumption. Now this export tax lands on a market already experiencing extraordinary stress. Paper silver sits at 89.14, while physical silver trades at 142.47, a premium of 59.8%. COMEX registered inventory stands at a critically low 2.31 million ounces. The Shanghai premium is 59.5%. The structural deficit was already 215.3 million ounces. Concentrated short positions remain massive on COMEX. Every single one of these indicators was already flashing red before Mexico announced this tax. Now layer an export tax on 23% of global supply on top of this picture. Let me be clear about something important for the new people watching. I'm analyzing a confirmed policy action and projecting supply and price impacts based on historical parallels and mathematical relationships. Policy analysis is not price prediction. The tax is real. The supply chain impact is calculable. The exact price response involves market psychology, timing, and variables I cannot perfectly forecast. I've created a complete export tax impact analysis PDF available free at ogjonag.com Mexico tax. Download it, verify every number, check my math. For questions or discussion, reach me at ogjonagagmail.com. For established eBay bullion dealers interested in educational collaboration, same contact. I don't sell courses, I don't sell signals, I share analysis based on data. What you do with it is your decision. I am only on X and YouTube. Handle is OG John AG on both. That's the only real me. Drop OG John Egg in the comments and tell me, did you see this coming? And does this change your silver accumulation timeline? Let's discuss below. Now let me walk you through the cascading supply chain effects because the first order impact, higher export costs, is only the surface. Second order effect number 1, refinery feedstock disruption outside Mexico. Multiple refineries depend on Mexican silver concentrate as feedstock. The 5% tax makes Mexican feedstock more expensive. There aren't enough alternative sources to replace 45 million ounces of annual concentrate exports. Peru's concentrate is already committed to existing contracts. Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina combined are similarly committed. Foreign refineries either pay the 5% tax and pass costs forward, reduce output due to feedstock constraints, or negotiate long-term agreements with non-Mexican producers at premium prices. All three outcomes result in higher refined silver costs globally. Second order effect number 2, COMEX deliverable supply reduction. A significant portion of COMEX deliverable silver originates from Mexican refining operations, particularly Metmex Penoles. The 8% export tax makes every Mexican origin COMEX bar more expensive to deliver. If Mexican origin silver represents even 20% of annual COMEX deliveries, the 8% tax adds approximately 7.12 per ounce to delivery costs. In a market where COMEX registered inventory is already at 2.31 million ounces, any increase in replenishment cost accelerates the path toward delivery failure. Second order effect number 3, Shanghai premium expansion. China imports significant volumes from Mexico. The export tax makes Mexican silver more expensive for Chinese buyers, already paying a 59.5% premium. Chinese buyers will either pay even higher premiums or source from alternative suppliers, both resulting in higher silver prices in Asia, which widens the Shanghai premium, increases the arbitrage incentive to ship non-Mexican silver to China, and reduces availability in Western markets. This is the reflexive loop. Mexico's export tax reorganizes global trade flows in ways that tighten supply everywhere. Second order effect number 4, mining company margin compression. First Majestic Silver, producing approximately 80% of its silver in Mexico, faces roughly a 10 to 12% margin reduction. For higher cost producers operating at $25–30 per ounce all-in sustaining costs, the tax could push marginal operations into unprofitability. This creates a perverse outcome. The export tax designed to increase revenue could reduce production if marginal mines shut down. Less production means less supply, means higher prices. This is the Laffer curve applied to silver mining. Fresnillo plc, the world's largest primary silver producer, faces approximately $275 million in additional annual costs. They can likely absorb this, but it reduces capital for exploration and development, constraining future supply growth. The long-term effect is to discourage investment in Mexican silver mining, making the structural deficit worse over time. Now let me address the exemptions because they create interesting dynamics. Silver exports to the United States and Canada under USMCA receive a reduced rate of 3% instead of the full 8% on refined bullion. This creates a two-tier pricing system. Mexican silver exported to USMCA partners costs 3% more, while silver exported to China, India, Japan, and the rest of the world costs 8% more. Mexico is using the export tax as a geopolitical tool, rewarding trade partners while penalizing competitors. The exemption for silver used in domestic Mexican manufacturing is complete, zero tax. This effectively says build your factory in Mexico and pay no export tax. For solar panel manufacturers and electronics companies, this creates a powerful incentive to relocate manufacturing to Mexico. If they do, silver previously exported gets consumed domestically, reducing global export volume even beyond the tax effect. Mexico isn't just taxing silver exports, it's restructuring its economy to capture more of the silver value chain domestically. The historical parallels all point one direction. Indonesia's nickel restrictions caused a 45% price spike within 4 months. India's iron ore duties at 20-30% effectively shut down most exports, causing global prices to spike 35%. Chile's lithium nationalization surged lithium prices. China's rare earth restrictions in 2010 caused the same pattern. Argentina's soybean export taxes. Zimbabwe's raw mineral export ban. In every single case, every one, the commodity price went higher. Not sometimes, every time. The magnitude varied, the timeline varied, but the direction was universal. Now here's the projected supply impact by scenario. Base case, mining companies absorb tax and maintain production. Supply reduction of approximately 10-15 million ounces as marginal operations close. Deficit increases to 225,230 million ounces. Price impact 8-12% upward over 6 months. Moderate case, some production cuts plus trade flow restructuring, supply reduction of 20-30 million ounces. Deficit increases to 235-245 million ounces. Price impact 15-22% upward. Severe case, significant production cuts plus domestic manufacturing incentives capture major volume, supply reduction of 35-50 million ounces, deficit increases to 250-265 million ounces, price impact 25-40% upward over 12 months. Black swan case, export tax triggers copycat policies in Peru and Chile, creating cascading restrictions, supply reduction potentially 80-120 million ounces, deficit potentially exceeds 300 million ounces, price impact potentially exceeding 50%. The probability-weighted expected impact is approximately 20-25 million ounces of reduced global supply, translating to a deficit expansion to approximately 235-240 million ounces, and a projected price impact of 12-18% upward over 6 to 12 months. Here's what the analysts are saying. David Morgan stated that Mexico taxing silver exports is the most significant policy development since the Hunt brothers era, emphasizing this is a structural policy shift that will persist and intensify. Eric Sprott commented that Mexico's export tax is a rational response to decades of extraction at artificially suppressed prices and will be the template for other producing nations. Keith Neumeyer of First Majestic noted that while the tax creates challenges, it validates the thesis that silver is undervalued because governments don't tax exports of commodities they believe are fairly priced. Ted Butler argued that Mexico's tax is effectively pricing silver closer to physical reality rather than paper fiction. Now, looking at the analytics, about 69% of you watching aren't subscribed. The complete export tax impact analysis PDF is free at ogjonag.com. Mexico tax. It includes tiered rate structure details, historical parallel analysis, mining company margin calculations, probability-weighted supply scenarios, COMEX and Shanghai impact projections, and a monitoring framework. No email required. If this kind of analysis adds value, hit subscribe. Questions go to ogjonagogmail.com. Now the geopolitical dimension. Resource nationalism has been accelerating globally since 2020. Silver sits at the intersection of every major geopolitical trend. It's essential for solar energy, electronics, medical devices, and military applications. And it's concentrated in 5 countries: Mexico at 23%, Peru at 15%, China at 13%, Russia at 6%, and Chile at 5%, producing 62% of the world's silver. If Mexico's export tax triggers similar policies in Peru and Chile, approximately 351 million ounces, 42.8% of global production, would be subject to export taxation. The domino theory of resource nationalism is documented. Indonesia's nickel restrictions led the Philippines to consider similar policies. Chile's lithium moves influenced Argentina and Bolivia. China's rare earth restrictions prompted examination elsewhere. Mexico's silver export tax will be studied by every producing nation's Ministry of Mines. Some will follow. The question is when, not if. The USMCA reduced rate of 3% still adds approximately $2.67 per ounce to Mexican silver delivered to the United States. For a solar manufacturer using 1 million ounces annually, that's $267 million in additional costs flowing through to consumer prices for solar panels, electronics, and medical devices. The inflationary impact arrives at a time when the Federal Reserve is already struggling to manage inflation. The compound effect analysis is critical because this export tax stacks on every existing supply constraint. The deficit gets worse. COMEX faces reduced replenishment. Shanghai premiums expand. Short positions face structural supply reduction, making delivery more difficult. Solar demand remains unchanged, but input costs rise. The Penasquito mine suspension compounds with the export tax to create a double supply shock from Mexico. Each factor amplifies every other factor in a reflexive feedback loop that was already in motion. Mexico's export tax adds another accelerant to every stage of the cycle. For monitoring this going forward, weekly, track Mexican export data through the Customs Authority SAT, watch COMEX warehouse receipts for changes in Mexican origin deliveries, and monitor mining company announcements. Monthly, compare actual export volumes to pre-tax baseline and track physical premium changes. Quarterly, assess which probability scenario actual developments most closely match and evaluate whether the tax structure has been modified. Download the complete monitoring framework at ogijonag.com. Mexico tax. Where does this leave us? 3 key takeaways. Number 1, Mexico's new silver export tax imposes a tiered structure of 5% on concentrates, 8% on refined bullion with 3% for USMCA partners, and 12% on finished products, affecting approximately 170 million ounces of annual exports from the world's largest silver-producing nation, creating a structural cost increase based on unanimous historical precedent from comparable export taxes globally. Number 2, the probability-weighted supply impact projects a reduction of 20 to 25 million ounces, expanding the deficit to approximately 235 to 240 million ounces, with margin compression causing marginal closures and domestic manufacturing incentives redirecting additional ounces away from export markets, while the precedent-setting nature creates meaningful probability of copycat policies within 24 to 36 months. Number 3, the complete analysis is free at ogijonag.com. Mexico tax. Download it, verify every number, track implementation weekly. The unresolved tension is this: Mexico's export tax is a signal that the world's largest silver producer recognizes silver is strategically undervalued. Governments don't tax exports of commodities they believe are fairly priced. Mexico is telling the world their silver is worth more than $89 an ounce. A sovereign nation with 23% of global production implementing policy based on the belief that silver's real value exceeds its paper price. The paper market can ignore premiums, deficits, inventory depletion, and delivery stress, but it cannot ignore sovereign policy action that structurally reduces supply. This export tax is physical market reality manifesting as law. The paper price will adjust. The timeline is uncertain, but the direction is not. Do your own due diligence. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. The tax could be modified, reduced, or repealed. The supply impact could be less than projected. Understand the risks. Position sizing matters more than any analysis. Be accountable for your own decisions. For questions, reach me at ogijonag@gmail.com. For established eBay bullion dealers interested in educational collaboration, same email. Mexico just taxed silver exports. The supply impact is calculable. The historical precedent is unanimous. The compound effect is extraordinary, and the mainstream isn't covering it. Stay rational, stay informed, think for yourself. Don't follow anyone blindly, including me. OG John AG out and about.